welcome to the Spring 2025 Grace Series Talk, a special series designed to empower you guys, students of graduate and undergraduate here in UCB. Today, we're thrilled to have Kathy Nick, Software Engineering Manager at H3 Harris, as our speaker today. We want to thank the department also. The department head is here. Thank you so much for continue supporting the Grace Series Talk, which helps inspire and motivate the students through these wonderful talks that we have every month. And again, a big thank you to Kathy for agreeing to be our speaker today. In her talk, the title is One Food in Front of Another. Kathy will share her life story, starting with her immigration to the United States as a child. She will talk about her education, how it led her to her current management role, and the challenges she faced. Kathy will also explain how her marathon runner mindset, putting one foot in front of another and never giving up, helped her overcome many obstacles in her life. At the end of the session, also, please remember to fill out our survey. We do have a survey. By doing so, you'll get a raffle number, and then we're going to randomly pick from you guys, and we're going to have 3 lucky winners that you're going to get 3 prizes. We look forward to hearing Kathy's inspiration talk and story, and hope you all enjoyed today's talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody. First off, I'd just like to start with a thank you to UTD, the faculty and staff, for inviting me to be here today. As mentioned, my name is Kathy Nick. I'm a software engineering manager at L3 Harris, and I've been working in the defense industry for about 24 years now. What I'm going to share with you, there's going to be some repetition in it, a lot of common themes, but basically I'll share my life story, the importance of family, and the challenges that I faced in life and how I overcame them. And I'll also share my path to leadership and share some tips along the way that helped me. As mentioned, I was born in 1979 in Iran at the beginning of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. So I never really got to experience what Iran used to be before all those changes happened. And as a result of that, my family made the difficult decision to try to immigrate to the United States, primarily because my parents wanted to give my sister and I opportunity to have a better future in life, because opportunity became very limited after that situation. So in 1983, my father put my mom, my sister, and I in an airplane and sent us to America while he was trying to wrap things up and work on his own paperwork to get here. We incidentally actually had relatives living here in the 1960s. My paternal grandparents and my uncle were living here. My uncle actually was a graduate of UT Arlington in engineering himself, and they were sponsoring us for our paperwork, but still, with everything that was going on between the hostage situation that happened in Iran and then subsequently the Iran-Iraq war, immigration out of that country was very difficult. But we were here, the 3 of us came over, and unfortunately, my father was not able to join us. He wasn't able to make it work. So we made the difficult decision to actually move back to Iran during those difficult times. I went to school there for about a year, and then we tried again in 1986, and thankfully we're all able to get our paperwork and get here. I've been here ever since. Never had the opportunity to go back to visit, which is fine. Happy to be here and happy for the opportunities that life here in America has given me. But what that basically meant was my entire family had to start over. Went from a life of luxury. My parents had very great careers and homes and cars and that sort of thing, which basically all had to go. And then they came here again. Really a self-sacrifice on their parts for the opportunity for my sister and I to have those better opportunities in life. And coming here as a child in itself was difficult because I didn't speak the language. It was very hard going to school here. A lot of children didn't know where I came from. They tried to speak to me in other languages I didn't understand. And it was a very difficult transition, but thankfully I got through that, after several years of moving around, all my parents tried to get us settled. And in fact, Richardson was the place that we ended up finally buying our first home because my sister started UTD as a student. And in our culture at that time, my parents were very conservative. You did not leave home to go to college. So they bought a home in Richardson with the intention of knowing that my sister was going to be a UTD student. And at that time, I started attending high school at Richardson High School. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of focus on academics growing up, especially in the math and sciences. I attended the magnet program at Richardson High School, taking the honors and advanced placement courses. And I loved school. I loved learning. And I actually finished all my credits by the time that I was 15 years old. I was done with high school, but my parents made the decision that 15 was too early to go to college. They felt like that needed to mature more psychologically, emotionally, that sort of thing. So I ended up staying in high school for another 2 more years, going part-time, which is fine. And I was a member of the Math Honor Society, the National Honor Society, Spanish Honor Society, and I was an advanced placement scholar there. And at that time, my goal was to go into medicine and become a doctor. Some of the other activities that I participated in those early years were a lot of academic competitions. The first one being the MESH competition, which was particularly of note to me because what MESH stands for is math, English, science, and history. Coming from a background where I didn't even speak a word of English, to being in an academic competition, with English being one of the areas that the competition was about. And I also participated in math counts as a participant. And then in my later years as an adult, I went back to it as a volunteer, being a proctor. Volunteering has always been important to me. I want to always be able to share what I enjoy with others and try to help empower them, especially in the areas of science and engineering. I did volunteering through the National Honor Society when I was in high school, and then also volunteered at events at SMU, where I went to college, and also through my employers. Speaking of college, I actually went to SMU in Dallas, and with the idea, as mentioned, that I would want to go into medicine. As I mentioned, I have a sister who's 8.5 years older than me, the one that went to UTD, and she ended up going to dental school. And as I was about to enter SMU as a freshman and go to orientation, she was actually about to take her dental boards and need an assistant. And I was the assistant. I had no training background or anything like that in medicine, but it was something that I was interested in. So I agreed. I went. And I have to tell you, in that moment where I was standing next to her with these tools in my hands and basically blood flying all over the place as she was working on this very complicated case that she had to be able to accomplish and fix to be able to pass. And I passed out. I fell backwards. I fell into a chair. The next thing I remember was my sister shaking me, waking me up, dragging me out of the room, saying, "Listen, this is my life here. I need to pass this test. You cannot do this. You have to eat these crackers, get back in there and finish this." I was like, okay, all right. We went back into the room. I did what I had to do. And this is in 1997. So I didn't even have a cell phone. But I remember after we were done, I went to a payphone. I called my dad and I said, "Listen, this is not it. I can't do medicine. I can't handle this. This is not it, you know." I have to tell you, probably I'm one of the last generations, at least in my culture, where parents made the determination that you have 3 choices. You either go into medicine, engineering, or law. That's it. No other option. So I talked to my father after I actually ended up going to SNU, kind of getting an idea what other options I had. And I decided, with my personality and my shy nature at that time, I definitely wasn't going to be able to go into law, so engineering was the option. And I made another phone call to my dad. I said, "Okay, how about industrial engineering?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay, how about computer engineering?" He said, "Yes." I was like, okay, all right, we found a degree that's going to be acceptable. And to be honest with you, that may seem harsh and very limiting, but I have to tell you, it really came from a good place with the best of intentions, because what my father really wanted was to lay the best foundation for me for success in my later years. So I'm very thankful for that. And, you know, here I am 24 years later, I'm still doing it. So obviously it wasn't a bad idea. So in that first year at SMU, they actually, it may have potentially changed since then, but they give you an opportunity to get a sampling of all the different engineering disciplines to make sure you really are on the right path, to know if you really pick what you want to do. So I took several EE courses, ME courses, and of course, computer science classes. And I knew in my heart, computer engineering was going to be what I was going to want to do, with an emphasis on software. And I have to say, I really, really cherish those 4 years at SMU. To this day, it's still my happy place. I still go there any opportunity I can to either contribute as an alumni ambassador, attend alumni events, football games, anything related. And one of the best experiences that I had at SMU was my senior design project. And going into it, we all knew we were going to have a very, very tough road ahead of us. Everyone had heard about how challenging this professor was. He came from the industry, and people were actually kind of scared to go into that class, because he would not pass anyone if he did not feel like you could go out there in the industry and actually do your job. And what our goal was to develop the game of Monopoly in C. And you never realize how complicated that game is until you actually write the code for it line by line. And that's buying and selling properties, houses, and hotels, trading, building a GUI for it, having artificial intelligence at that time. And that was really my first taste of real group work. And my team elected me to be the team leader. And I have to tell you, I was very nervous. I had not done any internships. All I knew was the courses I'd taken up to that point. I was very intimidated by the professor. I didn't really know what to expect, but you know, they voted me for lead, and I had to just take it and run with it. And I did. And I have to tell you, like I said, this was the biggest learning experience. I feel I had to pick one course in all the 4 years that I was at SMU. Truly, this class taught me what I need to learn to get in the industry, going from writing requirements all the way full life cycle to integration testing. And another key thing that happened during that experience was not everyone comes to the table with the same level of capabilities. You're going to have folks that are extremely intelligent. We had one person that was very good at doing the GUI. So I tasked him with that. To be honest with you, I also had someone that couldn't really write any code at all. To me, it was a shock of how did this person get to this level? But you have to get through the end. You had to get through this professor, and he wasn't going to pass you if you didn't have the ability, you know. And that was as part of being a lead. That was one of the things that I was responsible for, was to report status to our professor, and have to on a routine basis, just like you do in the industry. Well, here's our progress. These are our roadblockers. This is who contributed what and who did not contribute. And I have to tell you, thankfully, through a lot of hard work and pulling weight by the rest of the group and me working overtime while I was in school, I didn't get a spring break. Some of my classmates and team members went off on their senior trip. I was in a lab with a bottle of Pepto-Bismol because I was so stressed out trying to finish this project, coding away till the crazy hours of the night. And at the end of the day, you know, we were very successful. We were able to finish the project, and I got an A in that class. And even the folks that weren't able to contribute as well as others, I was able to find a role for them. Okay, you can't write code. Let's have you do documentation, you know, just something. Again, that was probably, not probably, but most definitely the best experience that I had prior to actually entering the job world. So with that, in my senior year, we started doing interviews for jobs, and one of the things that was really great was the Career Center at SMU, and they would have job fairs. And I'm sure UTD has something comparable, but the companies would come to campus, and if you were interested in doing an interview with a specific company, you would sign up, submit your resume, and if you got selected, you would do a first round interview there on campus. And at that time, majority of companies that came to our campus were either defense or telecom. And when I started my studies at SMU, my belief was that I was going to end up working in telecom. All the companies that are up and down 75, Nortel, Ericsson, that sort of thing. I believed that was going to be my future. But the reality was, even though these companies were coming to campus and holding these interviews simultaneously, they were still having hiring freezes and layoffs. So maybe it was in some hopes that their situation would improve and they want to maintain that relationship with the school so they could come back. But unfortunately, that never really ended up being the case. And I continued to go on and have next round interviews with Lockheed Martin, defense company. And what was really interesting was that there was also another job fair that happened in the Dallas area. It was called Women for Hire. And one of those managers that I met with at the Lockheed Martin interviews was also at this place. So I made that connection, that bond. It's like, oh, it's a familiar face. Hey, we met before. Here's my resume again. I really like this opportunity to come work for you guys. That kind of networking was critical back then because there was no LinkedIn. You couldn't just search some manager at XYZ company that you're interested in and be able to communicate with them. So I really believe that helped, just that opportunity to meet with that person again. And at that time, defense really was the place to go. They were hiring in large numbers, onboarding engineers by the hundreds on a weekly basis. So I simultaneously interviewed at both Lockheed Martin locations in Grand Prairie and Fort Worth, and I decided to accept an offer at the Aeronautics Division. And I moved from this area of town to Fort Worth to work there. And I have to tell you, when I made that change from being a student to the sedentary life of sitting in front of a computer with minimal movement up to 10 plus hours a day, I noticed a lot of changes. I started gaining weight and I was not very happy with that. And I tried to do a lot of different kinds of exercise. And what really seemed to be working for me was running. And every day when I went to work, there were all these flyers all around the company because Lockheed Martin was a sponsor of the Race for the Cure in Fort Worth. And I kept looking at it. I was like, could I do that? I don't know. I can't run 3 miles. That's too much. But I kept training and running, and eventually I signed up. And I tend to be a little bit of a nervous person. And even though I signed up and I ran and I had trained for it, I was constantly thinking, I'm going to be the last person. I kept looking behind me. Am I going to be last? Thankfully, I wasn't. And I managed to finish in about 32 minutes, which was pretty decent for me for a first timer. And I remember as I crossed the finish line, there was a lady that was handing out these flyers. And on that piece of paper, it said, run a marathon, change your life. And I was like, well, I was just trying to be polite. So I took the flyer from her and I'm like, marathon, 26 miles. No way, that's never going to happen. How do you go from 5K to 42.2K? But I took that paper home, I put it there on my desk, and I kept running. And I was really inspired. And I was like, you know what? This running makes me happy. I'm going to do this. So I took that paper, I filled it out, I submitted it, and I started training. And in December of 2004, I ran the Honolulu Marathon. I took my mom with me. She was my fan, cheering me on. It was a very great experience. And from there, I ended up running the Chicago Marathon a couple of times, Austin, Birmingham, Miami, and I would say hundreds of local races between 5Ks to half marathons and marathon relay. I really enjoy it, of course, and I try to encourage friends and family to run, and I've been able to get a few participants to come run with me. I'd like to get them back out there again. And I have to tell you, running is not just about physical health. It's really, truly a natural high. It improves your mood. It gives you energy. Even to this day, when I have days where I'm just like, oh my God, work is so stressful. The kids want things nonstop. I'm like, let me go run. Let me go get my workout. And then it feels like I've been charged into an outlet and I get all the boost and I'm able to do it again and do everything that's expected. And in addition to that, not just for the physical and mental health, running helps you learn perseverance that you can't quit, especially at the marathon level. You just keep going. Focusing back, switching gears a little bit back, talking about the defense industry, I have to tell you, when I started in 2001, very frankly speaking, like a lot of other situations in industries, there was not a lot of diversity at that time, which I have to say, now having been in the industry for 24 years, it's vastly improved, and I'm happy to see that. In those early years, there were few females. I faced challenges in my voice being heard. I remember being in meetings and I would say something, and it was almost like very early on. I'm not speaking which company, but very early on, I would say something and it would almost be unheard, and then someone else would repeat it, and it, oh yeah, what they said. I'm like, wait a minute, I just said that, like. But eventually, and very quickly, thankfully, through hard work and merit, I became a senior software engineer, and and something I had to personally work on is that I was very shy. I had to come out of my shell. And I don't think that would just have to be in that industry under those circumstances, but that was an improvement that I had to make in myself to overcome that. And another thing that I was a part of was a year-long leadership program that helped lay the foundation of where I am today. So that's one of my first tips for you guys. When you're in the industry, if you have those opportunities for leadership rotational programs or anything of that nature, take advantage of it, because it will really help pave the path for you. So after I ran that first Honolulu marathon, the next marathon that I did was the Chicago Marathon in 2005. And it was a really wonderful experience. At that race, both my mom, my dad came. I ran with a couple of other friends, and all their families were able to join us and made a lot of great memories. And I kept running. In 2007, I ran 6 half marathons in 3 months, and 3 of those were back-to-back weekends. It was Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin. Again, my parents' family, biggest supporters, they came to watch me run those first 3 half marathons. And after the third one, unexpectedly, my father passed away. And I'd already registered. This was a challenge, it's a 6 half marathon challenge. I was like, I'm not quitting. I'm going to keep going. And again, putting that one foot in front of the other, showing up the races 1 mile after another, I think it truly helped with the grieving process of that shock that came to our family. And when you run a marathon, after your 20th mile, your body starts to shut down. It's like, I'm not doing this anymore. So then it becomes all about this, and you keep putting that one foot in front of the other and keep going. Repeated theme here, quitting is not an option. And then fast forward to 2015. By this point, I'm married. I have 2 kids. I had a daughter that was about 2.5, and I had a 1-year-old. And I decided I was going to train for another marathon again, a full marathon with 26 miles. And it was very challenging trying to get all the pieces together. He needed help with the kids. My mom was going to come with me, but she ended up having a knee replacement, and unfortunately was not able to join me. So this time, very different circumstances from the time I did it 10 years ago. I had to train on a treadmill. Training for 26 miles on a treadmill is not an easy thing to do, but I did it because I was motivated and I wanted to get this done. And I had to go by myself. I didn't have the spectators and support that I had the first time that I did it, and all those other races where I had my parents there. And, later on in some of those other races, my husband and my kids. But something that happened that was very special. After my dad passed away, we would see his name. His name was David, and Dawood in Farsi. And his name would just appear at different places in good times and bad. For example, one of the first times that we went to Disney World, my husband and my children and my mom went there, and we came up to the entry, and they have them there, that the little ball thing that you scan your tickets. David and Dave were standing there. It showed us that my dad was there with us in that joyous moment. And then other times of note where his name came up, in the mid, like 2016, my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. And anytime she had a surgery, or I got a phone call about a status. Like, for example, I was at work. I got a call. My brother-in-law was calling to say something about how she was doing. I walked in there. There was a yellow pages phone book, and there was the name of a lawyer on there as I was talking to David. When she had her double mastectomy, I went to the waiting room. The name on the wall, it was the David such and such waiting room. So who's always with us? And then going back to that race in Chicago, when I was by myself, I got on the airplane at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was kind of sad. I was like, man, last time I did this, I had family with me. This time I'm alone. This is a bummer. But I was like, it's okay. It's early. It's going to be a long weekend of running. I'm just going to kind of lay my head on the side there out by the window and take a little nap and get some rest. And the flight attendant came on and said, hi, everybody. This is David, blah, 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 blah. I was like, Dad's here again with me. And showed up at the race. At a race for a marathon, they have basically what they have is leaders for time, basically pacers, to tell you if you want to run in such amount of time, you line up with them and they try to help guide you to your goal. Went to the area where my expected finish time was. I met the pace leader, David from Dallas. What are the chances of that? And kept the motivation going. And I ran. In the Chicago Marathon specifically, there's 1 million spectators, not exaggerating, that line the road while you run, and they're cheering for you the whole way. But that last mile 25 to 26, there's nobody there. You know why? Because if they're going to come watch the race, if they're that close to the finish, they're going to go to the finish to see their runner come through. And one of the things that we do as runners, at least at those big races, we put our name on our shirts so people can cheer for you. And when I got to mile 25, you go from this constant cheer and music and loud noise, and then all of a sudden, it's just you, this and this, one foot in front of another, go. You have to. You want to quit, but you can't. And incidentally, the name that they had on their shirt fallen, and I passed over David. So he was there for me from Dallas, flying there to the beginning of the race to the end. So that actually was the last time I ran a full marathon. Since then, I've done several halves. But on the subject of family, and switching gears again to talking about my career, every time I moved jobs, 100% it was with the intent of moving myself closer to family. Like I said, I started my career in Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth. I worked there from 2001 to 2005. I was a software engineer there, and I had a very rare and amazing opportunity to work on the F-35 program from the very beginning as it was awarded to Lockheed Martin in 2001. It's at the time the biggest defense contract that was awarded, and I got to literally start with a blank screen and start development. And to this day, if you ever see them at the air shows or you see them on TV, my code's on there. And then, so in 2005, I decided to give up working at the aeronautics division because that coincided with the time that I wanted to move closer to family, and I moved over to the Lockheed Martin. This was a fire control in Grand Prairie, where I became a senior software engineer when I did the leadership program. And while I was working there, I worked on a lot of different rockets and launchers. And then in 2007 is the year that my father passed away. And I was like, okay, it's really time to get closer to home. Collins Aerospace is in Richardson. at that time, continued to be a senior software engineer and a technical lead, working primarily on helicopters, military helicopters at that time. I also worked on the presidential helicopter. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity to come full circle and work on the F-35 again. And so I ended up spending the next 12 years doing that. And early on in those years, when I was at Raytheon, I had an opportunity to move into management. And I really had to weigh out the situation for myself. At that time, I was a new mom, 2 small children. And to me, the priority in that moment and at that time was family. And I opted not to take that opportunity to move into management. I worked part-time and I cherished those days and years because it gave me the opportunity to be with my kids when they were really young. And the reality with that is I lost the opportunity for management, and management above me shifted and those opportunities evaporated and I lost it. And that's okay because everything happens for a reason. With that, I became mentored by the chief engineer, again, working on the F-35 program. And through his mentorship, I became a technical lead and the principal developer again on the F-35 program. I really enjoyed that work. I did it for 12 years and I didn't really want to leave. The reason why I left Raytheon was their contract, their portion of it was coming to an end. And it truly was a time for something new, which led me to my current role at L3 Harris, where I've been at since 2022. So as I mentioned, the reason for that change was because what I was doing and enjoyed for so long in the F-35 program for 16 years between Lockheed Martin and Raytheon was coming to an end. So in May of 2022, I made this change or decision for the job change, and simultaneously on the last day of my work at Raytheon, my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. Completely unknown to us. We had no idea that was going to happen. And what my intentions and plans were to take a week off between the 2 job positions to spend time with my kids. One of my daughter, the one that was diagnosed, was finishing 5th grade. I was going to do end of year activities with her. This is going to be a good time. My younger daughter was turning 8. The day after the diagnosis, we had friends and family scheduled to come to our house for a party. We're going to celebrate my new job. And here we are. We had to cancel it. I spent that week of what was supposed to be a great time with my kids in the hospital, trying to decide, what do I do with my life? Do I press forward with this new job opportunity where I'm completely new? They haven't even met me face to face because technically we're still kind of on the tail end of COVID times, and all my interviews were online. So I hadn't even gotten to meet them face to face. Or should I try to pursue the opportunity of going back to Raytheon, because I would have the opportunity to get FMLA, family medical leave of absence? What do I do? Very difficult time trying to process this diagnosis, simultaneous with trying to make a job change. And with family support, I made the decision to press forward with this new opportunity, not knowing what was going to happen. Again, so thankful everything happens for a reason. Even during what was literally the darkest moments of my life, I had to walk into that new job role, face my manager, and upon meeting them, she was going to take me to orientation. And I said, hold on, before we do that, I need to tell you something. I actually can't come to work tomorrow because my daughter just got diagnosed with leukemia. I have to pick her back to the hospital. And I have to tell you, in defense, you're hired because your credentials and clearances and that sort of thing. And up to that point, a lot of the work that I did was classified, meaning no options for remote work. You have to be in a lab. That's just the way it is. So I really had no idea how this news was going to be taken at this new position. And on the spot, in that moment, my manager took my hands, sat me down in my office, said, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of you. You could just go ahead and go to orientation. By the time you come out this afternoon, we'll have something figured out for you. And sure enough, that's what happened. And by the time I was done for the day, we went and talked to HR. They reassigned my work to a different program, what we call IRAD. It's Internal Research and Development, so it's not classified, and gave me the opportunity to do work remotely. And they told me that if my daughter is in the hospital, I can be there with her. I do not have to worry about it, which is truly the most amazing gift in that very difficult time. So when she was in the hospital, I was with her. And if you have ever had the unfortunate situation of having to be with somebody who's in the hospital or been there yourself, being in the hospital is not something that's just 9 to 5. It's round the clock. They're coming and checking her blood, giving her medicine. This is 24 hours, and I'm sitting there, and I have a little couch to sleep on, so it's not really comfortable, and neither one of us are sleeping. But you know what? I still had to work. I need to maintain my employment. So even though I'm navigating that situation, I'm opening the laptop at 7 o'clock and multitasking, taking care of her and working. And I didn't skip a beat. I didn't miss a day of work. I kept putting one foot in front of the other, just like my marathons, even in those darkest days. And with that, my daughter was in 2.5 years of treatment. Thankfully, she's doing really well. She actually finished her treatment about 6 months ago. But even with everything that was going on at that time, I continued to persevere, continued to work hard, contribute as I should. And in 6 months at L3 Harris, I actually moved into management. I got promoted. Everything happens for a reason. And this is hard, but you know, in those 2.5 years, every chemo treatment, every spinal tap, every dose of high dose methotrexate that they gave my daughter, every blood test, and waiting for those results, one foot in front of the other, keep going. I truly felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders during that time. I have one daughter who's sick, her life is on the line. I have another daughter at home who's missing me, and everyone, family, friends, they're doing their part to support, but there's nobody like mom to my 2 little girls, and handling the finances, trying to learn my new role. But in all of that, quitting was never an option. You just keep going forward. And I still have to say I'm extremely thankful for the support of family and friends that were there by our side during those difficult times and to help, get us past it. Now switching back to a little bit more description about my job. When you're in the engineering world and you're looking into which path you want to take in advancing your career, there are 2 options. You can either go the technical route or the functional route. Typically, both of those start with becoming a technical lead of a program. And from there, you can either go into program management, which is more on the technical side, or you can go into functional management. I have to say, neither one of them is 100% this or 100% that. There's still going to be some mixing of the 2. So even though right now I'm in a functional management role, I still do have involvement on the technical leadership side. But in addition to that, some of the routine tasks that I do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month basis is responsible for doing performance evaluations. I have monthly one-on-ones with my reports. I hold team meetings. I'm also in charge of determining merits, increases, and promotions, hiring events, recruiting. I've been here actually to UTD and interviewing other candidates. So that's just a typical day-to-day, week-to-week description of what I do, in addition to the technical work that I have always done. Some summary and takeaways and tips from me to you if you have a desire for a path in leadership. If you end up finding employment at a company that has leadership or rotational programs for leadership, definitely use that as an opportunity. A lot of times what they do is they'll be on a 6-month basis where you get to move around, you get to continue to develop those connections and networks and build on your skill sets and get face time with different folks to be able to build that foundation for yourself upon finishing that rotational program or leadership program, to then be able to continue moving in that path of whether you want it to be technical or functional leadership. Another tip that I have for you is become a subject matter expert in something. Find something that interests you and own it. And then become the person, the go-to person in that area so that people know that they can depend on you. And then simultaneously, if you come across issues, do what you can to fix it. But if you see something that's going to require more attention, don't let problems linger. Don't let things snowball. Try to fix them at the lowest level and communicate that to your team members, your leadership and management, just so everyone's on the same page. Because the worst thing you want to do in industry is affect cost and schedule. You don't want to be behind schedule. You don't want to overrun your budget. So if you find problems, try to address them as soon as possible at the lowest level. Additionally, you should always know that you won't always have the answers, and it's okay to ask for help. In the industry, what are called SMEs, subject matter experts, or people you can count on. You are trying to solve a problem. You don't know what the answers are, and go seek guidance. There are typically people out there that, like I said, that like to find something, own it, and become an expert on that you can rely on. And there's nothing wrong with that, to ask questions and for help. Additionally, one of the things, like I mentioned, that really helped me was having mentorship with senior engineers or management, whichever path you want to go, and shadowing them on a day-to-day basis. Opportunity or volunteering for opportunities, take something off their load to help them. Helps them because it makes their job a little bit easier, but it also helps you enhance your skill set and, establish yourself as someone that can be accountable and be able to move into those roles in the future. Another thing is look for opportunities to report and present to leadership, management, customers, and clients. Anytime you can get face time with leadership, it's always advantageous. Even if you attend events like skip level lunches, like I said, volunteer for tasks that get you visibility, network, build connections across multiple disciplines. Don't stay pigeonholed. If you're software, don't say, oh, well, I'm just only going to focus on the software. Try to see what you can do to build those connections with the other disciplines and how you can contribute to them. And that's it. That's all I have. Again, thank you for having me today, and thank you for your time. If you have any questions. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions? You want to say that with this one? No, go ahead.
For being here with us today. Could you please share any experiences or insights on how did you manage 2 children, your job, and the regular chores?
So I have to tell you, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. First thing I'm going to tell you is pick your battles. I think as engineers, I can only be speaking for myself, but we're perfectionists. We want everything done. We want it done correctly in a schedule, sequence, and that sort of thing. Life can't always be that way. You have to prioritize first and foremost. Some things, if it doesn't have to happen today, then move it down the list. That's one. Another thing is that there's an expression that says it takes a village to raise kids. I know as immigrants, outside of my parents, we did not have a large family here locally, as relatives passed away and that sort of thing. But if you have family to rely on, that's one option. And if you don't, friends, always helpful. And I'll give you another example. My sister, who's 8.5 years older than me, did not believe in daycare. She wanted my mom to raise her kids until they started elementary school. I didn't have that option in the very early years because my mom, like as I mentioned, had knee replacement. She couldn't chase children, So especially with my younger daughter, we had to put her in daycare, 14 months old. It was a very hard pill to swallow because I didn't want to do that. She was a baby. She couldn't even talk. I'm like, well, will they take good care of her there? Like I would. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You just do it. And that first month was brutal. I used to watch her on the camera on my phone, and she'd be at the door crying, and I was at work. I was crying. What have I done? Why am I putting her in daycare? But you know what, though? Life has to go on because you have to work. It is what it is. And It took a month, literally a month. She cried at the door. And then first day of the second month, I walked in there to the preschool with her. And my daughter literally ran up to the teacher, who was sitting on the floor, jumped in her lap, hugged her, said, "Bye, mommy. Thank you. Thank you. All that pain and suffering for that month." She adjusted and everything's fine then, and prioritize, get help where you can get it. Daycare is okay. And you'll get through it. Sure.
Good. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I want to ask, so based on your presentation, various places where you work, what I noticed is that you actually stay within the same industry.
Yes.
So you started with aerospace, and I think that my take on it is that stability in your work, the line of work, and getting expertise, like what you're saying, deep expertise into some field of work or subfield of work, it's so important rather than just jumping from place to place. Changing careers too many times, or changing the working place too many times. So do you see that stability as contributing to your success?
100%. And I have to tell you, as I mentioned, I never thought I would ever end up in the defense industry. But once I started there, 100% stability played a huge factor in that, because, defense is not for everybody. I know tons of friends that work in the commercial or academic fields, and you have to find what works for you. Stability is something that is very important to me. And I mentioned, I didn't move for advancement as my priority. I literally moved because I wanted to be closer to home. That does help. You sometimes loyalty doesn't always get you higher in the ladder. It can, if you show merit and prove yourself, but it did help. But yes, for sure, stability was a huge factor in it. And I have to tell you, defense is very process oriented. So before you go to step B, you have to check step A 10 times. So your brain becomes programming. We're programmers. That's how our brain is. And once you start doing that, year after year, it's hard to go do something different, ad hoc. And I enjoy it. It really makes me happy. I can, with a very short exception in my career, I have to say, I've enjoyed every job that I had, every opportunity that I had, what I do. My favorite job used to be working on the F-35. I did that for 16 years. That's why I stayed at Raytheon for so long. But change happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I wouldn't give up what I have right now for anything. I really am happy in this functional management role. In my interview for this role, they were asking me some questions, and I quoted the movie Office Space. It's probably way, way before all your times. You may not even heard of it, but one of the characters in the movie says, "I'm a people person." I'm a people person. I like people. I like interacting. I like looking out for my reports, whether because about merit increases or when they come to me with the challenges that they're facing. Okay, let's see, what's your problem? Tell me, and let me see what I can do to help you. That's how I am built. So.
Any other questions? Yeah, I think one of the questions that actually we got in the survey last time, and we got this request that we want to have somebody come and explain what is the day-to-day job of a program, somebody like you, the manager, would be look like. So I know you did explain a little bit of it, but if you have a little bit more, like, not of course specific to your industry, but something that is just generally, that's what is going to happen in your day-to-day life. That would be nice, because again, we did get a request one time.
Sure. Absolutely. So like I said, with the functional management role, there's still a technical component to it where you're assigned to a program, and depending on which phase of the program you are, your day-to-day tasking varies, whether you're in the design phase or development phase or testing. I have to tell you, as a functional manager, I don't do day-to-day development anymore. The opportunity is there. Thankfully, company that I'm at is very flexible. If you still want to be, in the lab coding way, you can still do that. I personally, I'm not doing that this time. I'm providing more technical leadership insight and as a part of my role. And then the other part is the functional management. In the 3 years that I've worked at L3 Harris, I've ranged between 6 to 12 reports. I have had, starting at the intern level all the way up to level 5 lead engineers reporting to me. Part of what I do is I report status. I help them with the road blockers again. The items that I mentioned, like doing performance evaluations, we do team meetings, we do one-on-ones, a lot of the functional aspect of it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other question? Let me put up the survey and I'm gonna also, thank you. Thank you for. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for, this inspirational talk. You know, your story and the lesson that you shared about overcoming all the challenges. You're really having kids, you know how difficult it is to see your kid being sick in a hospital, and her daughter is really like I love her, and I never forget the day that I got the news. It was very, really devastation for me and my kids also, because they're really close friends. But like, I'm just looking at her, how she's like never quit and she just kept going. So I think that's a mindset that we all have to really have. Like, you know, sometimes even our students, like, you know, they have one exam, two exam in one day, we're gonna quit already. So always think about the challenges that life can have for us. And so I'm really grateful for your time and being such a part of speakers for us today. Your journey is really great reminder of a strength for all of us. So never give up. And now for our students. So I'm gonna have the survey up here for you. And so you're gonna fill out the survey for us. You can request what you want for our next speaker to be. And also, if you have any specific question that come to your mind, you can always ask us. And where's my? Oh.